Let's talk about God. I believe in God because I figure if I'm wrong, I won't know. I'm kind of like hedging my bets. Isn't that the way most people believe in God, is because they figure if they don't believe it and they're wrong, they're screwed. If they believe it and they're right, they win.
I want to talk about how dumb this argument is, but before you click away, listen to how Hitchens flips it, because his response is brilliant. I'm going to give my thoughts right after.
Let's talk about God. I believe in God because I figure if I'm wrong, I won't know. I'm kind of like hedging my bets. Isn't that the way most people believe in God, is because they figure if they don't believe it and they're wrong, they're screwed. If they believe it and they're right, they win.
That is what's known as Pascal's Wager. Now, in my book, which you kindly featured, I restate the wager. I say, look, suppose I check out, and I've been wrong all along, and I'm suddenly in front of some chap who can sort of bar my way to the gates of paradise, where, of course, I want to go, because who wouldn't want to live for an eternity just praising God as if he was Kim Il-sung?
Mr. Hitchens.
Leave that to one side.
Christopher, we got to roll.
And he says, what the hell? I say, look, you didn't give me enough evidence.
You got it.
Wouldn't he be nicer to me than if I'd been a hypocrite?
Hello, humans. Welcome back. And if you're new here, welcome. Today, we are talking about one of the most common reasons people give for believing in God. And it usually sounds just like this.
Let's talk about God. I believe in God because I figure if I'm wrong, I won't know. I'm kind of like hedging my bets. Isn't that the way most people believe in God, is because they figure if they don't believe it and they're wrong, they're screwed. If they believe it and they're right, they win.
And don't get me wrong, I get why that sounds powerful. It sounds practical. It sounds safe. It sounds like you are just making the smart bet. But is this argument actually intelligent? Or does it fall apart the second you put 1 ounce of thought into it? So let's jump to the most obvious problem that a lot of believers do not think about. This so-called solid argument is not an argument at all. It is a wager. You know, like the wager that God and the devil had in Job. Sorry, I'm getting off track. Pascal's Wager. Now, let's go over exactly what that is, just in case you are unaware. The argument basically is this: if you believe in God and God is not real, you do not really lose anything, except maybe not living your life fully, not thinking honestly, and not actually helping people around you because you are waiting on God to solve the problem. But if you do not believe in God and God is real, you could lose everything. We will get to why that one is not so smart either. So the smart bet is to believe. That is the argument. But what I want you to notice is how much this argument skips over. First, it does not prove God exists. It just assumes some kind of God might exist, which leads to the next problem. Which God? Human beings have believed in thousands of gods, spirits, divine beings, and sacred systems. So if we are betting, I need to know which table I'm sitting at, because if I think I'm playing no-limit poker, but I'm actually sitting at a limit table, I'm going to be making a lot of the wrong choices. You need to know the rules before the bet means anything. Are we talking about the Christian God, the Muslim God, the Jewish God, a Hindu God, or a deist God, a God who rewards honesty? That would already be a problem for Christianity. A God who punishes fake belief? That would be a problem for this argument too. Because Christians who use Pascal's Wager seem to think they can fool God. Really think about what he said.
I'm kind of like hedging my bets.
Hedging your bets with an all-knowing God. Does he think that God would not know? That is the part that makes this whole argument feel ridiculous. The wager does not ask if the belief is honest. It does not ask if the belief is true. It just asks, what do I have to say to avoid punishment? So even if you decide to go with the Abrahamic God, we still have another problem. When do we prove the Bible is true? Because even if some kind of God exists, we still have not shown that Christianity is the right religion. We have not shown the Bible is the right book. We have not shown the specific version of salvation is the right one, and then it still does not prove heaven or hell. So now the argument is asking me to gamble on a punishment system that has not been demonstrated, from a religion that has not been demonstrated, connected to a God that has not been demonstrated. That is not a smart bet. That is a stack of assumptions wearing a suit. All we did was threaten the consequences of being wrong. That is not evidence. That is just pressure.
You didn't give me enough evidence.
Exactly. That is the whole problem. Before you ask me to bet my life on the answer, you have to show me why your answer is even on the board. And this leads to the next problem. Even if I wanted to take the bet, how exactly am I supposed to do that? Because people say just believe, as if belief is a button I can just press, as if I can just wake up tomorrow and decide Christianity is true. But that is not how belief works. I cannot choose to believe the moon is made of cheese. I cannot choose to believe my car can fly.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I cannot choose to believe Spider-Man is watching over New York City right now. I can say the words. I can act like I believe. I can join a group that believes it. I can even sing the songs, bow my head at the right time. But deep down, I either find it convincing or I do not. That is what Pascal's wager gets wrong. It treats belief like a casino chip. Just place it on God and hope you win. But belief is not a chip. Belief is what happens when your mind is convinced something is true. So if the evidence does not convince me, pretending to believe does not solve the problem. It just makes me dishonest. And if the God you believe in is all-knowing, then fake belief should not help me anyway. It should expose me.
Got it.
Wouldn't he be nicer to me than if I'd been a hypocrite?
Exactly. That is why the response is so good, because it flips the morality of the wager. Pascal's wager assumes the safest person is the one who says the right religious words just in case. But what if the better person is the one who refuses to lie? What if honest doubt is morally better than fake belief? Because if I stand before God and say, I looked for the evidence, I asked questions, and I was not convinced, I do not see why that should be worse than saying, I pretended to believe because I was scared of hell. One is honest, the other is surviving. And this is where the argument starts to feel less like faith and more just like fear. Fear can make you act like something is true, but fear does not make something true. A child can be scared of a monster under the bed. That fear can change how they sleep. It can make them turn on the lights. It can make them run and jump into bed so nothing grabs them by their ankles. And I know some of y'all did that, don't lie, but none of that proves the monster is real. It only proves the fear is real. That is what Pascal's wager does with hell. It takes fear and dresses it up as wisdom. But I am scared of being wrong is not the same thing as I have a good reason to believe. And that matters, because fear is one of the easiest ways to control people. You don't have to convince them. You just have to make them think the cost of questioning is too high. And what makes this even more interesting is that the Bible itself says perfect love casts out fear. But Pascal's wager tries to make fear the foundation of belief. So which one is it? Is faith supposed to be about love and truth? Or is it supposed to be about making sure you do not get punished? Because those are not the same thing. And honestly, this might be the part that bothers me the most. Pascal's wager does not make God look better. It makes God look worse. Because the argument is not, here is why God is true. It's not, here is why God is loving. It's not, here is why this religion is supported by good evidence. The argument is basically, believe or else. That is the engine. And once you see it that way, God starts sounding less like a loving father and more like a cosmic mob boss. Nice soul you got there. Would be a shame if something happened to it. And I know that sounds harsh, but what else is the argument saying? It is not asking me to follow the evidence. It is asking me to manage risk. It is not inviting me into truth. It is warning me about the consequences. That is not love. That is a threat with religious branding.
Of course I want to go, because who wouldn't want to live for an eternity just praising God as if he was Kim Il-sung?
That line is funny, but the point underneath is serious. Sometimes the version of heaven people are selling does not even sound like freedom. It sounds like eternal worship duty. So now the wager gets even stranger. It is not just asking me to believe without evidence. It is asking me to gamble my honesty for a reward I cannot verify, from a God I cannot verify, inside of a system I cannot verify. And if I refuse to pretend I am suddenly the unreasonable one, that does not sound like truth. That sounds like fear wearing a suit and tie. So this is where I land. If there is no God, pretending does nothing. If there is a God, pretending should not fool it. And if there is a good God, I would hope honesty matters more than fear, because I can be wrong. I have no problem admitting that. But what I can't do is force myself to believe something just because the punishment. That is not seeking truth. That is reacting to a threat. And if God gave me a brain, gave me a reason, gave me the ability to ask questions, and I'm punished for that, the problem is not my doubt. The problem is this bullshit system. So, this is why this argument does not work for me. Not because the consequences are small. If hell is real, the consequences would be massive. The problem is the consequences do not make the belief true. Fear does not create evidence, and pretending to believe just in case does not make you honest. It makes you scared. And I think that is why Hitchens' response works so well, because he does not just say, I do not believe. He asks why an honest answer would be worse than a fake one. And that is the part believers should really think about. If God is real and God knows everything, God would know whether you actually believed or whether you were just trying to win a bet. So let me know what you think. Is Pascal's wager a smart reason to believe? Or is it just fear dressed up like it's logic? And if there is a God, should honest doubt really be worse than fake belief? As always, I'm Jay. Throw away your feelings, open your minds, and question your beliefs.